Their lawyer looked at me and said, "Your Honor, this woman sells tacos from a truck. She has no trademark. She has no patent on a recipe. She is not a brand. She is a street vendor." He said it like he was describing a stray cat that had wandered into the wrong building. The attorneys on the other side, 4 of them, sitting in a row like a wall of silk ties and leather folders, did not even look at me. They were so confident they had already started checking their phones. But they did not know about the videos. They did not know about the screenshots. And they definitely did not know about the man sitting in the back row who used to work for them. My name is Elena Vargas. I am 40 years old, and this is the story of how a restaurant chain worth $60 million stole everything I built from a food truck parked on a corner in East Austin, and how I took it all back. I need to start with my grandmother, because that is where the food starts. My abuela, Rosalinda, grew up in a village outside Oaxaca. She learned to cook from her mother, who learned from her mother, who learned from hers. 4 generations of women standing over open fires, grinding corn by hand, roasting chiles until the smoke stung your eyes, making mole that took 3 days to finish. These were not recipes, they were rituals, and my grandmother carried every single one of them across the border when she came to Texas in 1972 with nothing but a suitcase and a bag of dried chiles. She cooked for her family, she cooked for her neighbors, she cooked for the church. Everybody in the neighborhood knew Rosalinda's food. When she made tamales for Christmas, people lined up on the sidewalk. When she brought her pozole to a potluck, the pot was empty in 15 minutes. She never charged anyone. She said feeding people was not a business, it was a calling. I grew up in her kitchen. From the time I was 5 years old, I stood on a step stool beside her and watched her hands move, crushing, folding, stirring, tasting. She taught me by touch. "Feel the mesa," she would say. "If it sticks to your palm, it needs more fat. If it crumbles, it needs more water. The dough tells you what it wants. You just have to listen." By the time I was 12, I could make every dish in her repertoire. By 15, I was inventing my own. I took her mole base and added smoked coffee. I took her elote recipe and added a chipotle crema that made people close their eyes when they tasted it. I took her carnitas method, 12 hours in the lard with orange peel and cinnamon, and added a beer braise that made the meat so tender it fell apart if you looked at it wrong. My grandmother tasted my chipotle crema when I was 16. She did not smile. She did not compliment me. She just took another spoonful, set it down, and said, "Bueno, that one is yours now." That was the highest praise Rosalinda Vargas ever gave. I carry it with me to this day. I did not go to culinary school. I could not afford it. I worked in restaurant kitchens from the time I was 18. Prep cook, line cook, sous chef, anything that let me be near a stove. I worked at Mexican restaurants that served Tex-Mex to tourists, the kind of places where the queso came from a can and the homemade salsa was from a Cisco bag. It made my soul hurt. But I learned the business side. I learned food costs and portion control and how to manage a rush and how to clean a flat top at midnight when your back is screaming and your feet are swollen and you have to be back in 8 hours. When I was 32, I took everything I had saved, $18,000, which represented 10 years of living in a studio apartment and eating employee meals and never buying anything I did not absolutely need. And I bought a food truck, a 20-year-old step van with a transmission that groaned, a generator that smelled like burning hair, and enough kitchen space for one person to cook if that person did not mind bumping her elbows on the walls every time she turned around. I named it Abuela's Kitchen. I painted the name on the side myself in hand-lettered script that my cousin helped me design. Below the name, I painted the same words my grandmother used to say, "La comida es amor." Food is love. I parked on the corner of 6th and Chicon in East Austin. First day I sold 11 meals. Second day, 19. Third day, word started spreading. By the end of the first month, I had a line around the block at lunch. The food was not complicated. Street tacos, elote cups, birria quesadillas with a consommé that people said tasted like it had been simmering for 100 years, the chipotle crema, the smoked coffee mole, the carnitas with beer braise and pickled red onion, everything from my grandmother's kitchen, filtered through my own hands and my own ideas. I also started posting videos on TikTok, short clips of me cooking in the truck, the sound of tortillas hitting the flat top, the sizzle of carnitas in the pan, the bright colors of pico de gallo. I talked to the camera the way my grandmother talked to me, casual, warm, like we were standing in the same kitchen. I showed the techniques she taught me. I showed my own twists. I showed the line of people waiting and the look on their faces when they took the first bite. The videos went viral. The first one that blew up was a 30-second clip of me making birria from scratch. 17 million views. The comments were insane. People tagging their friends, asking where the truck was parked, saying they were driving from Houston or Dallas or San Antonio just to try it. Within a year, I had 370,000 followers on TikTok. 80,000 on Instagram, and a line that sometimes stretched 2 blocks. Food critics started coming, then travel shows, then newspapers. Austin Monthly put me on the cover. The headline said, "The Queen of East Austin." I was making real money for the first time in my life. Not wealthy, but enough to pay my bills without counting coins, enough to send money to my mother, enough to start saving for a second truck. That is when the trouble started. A restaurant chain called Fuego Fresco opened its first location about 8 miles from my truck. I did not think much of it. Austin had 100 Mexican restaurants. One more was not going to hurt me. Then a customer showed me their menu. I looked at it and the floor dropped out from under me. It was my menu. Not similar to my menu. The same dishes, the same names. Birria quesadillas with consomme, smoked coffee, mole tacos, chipotle crema elote, even the beer-braised carnitas with pickled red onion. Everything was there. Every single dish I had created. Every combination I had developed over years of experimentation, listed under the Fuego Fresco logo like they had invented it. The restaurant even looked like my truck. The same color scheme, burnt orange and black. The same hand-lettered style on the signage. The name Fuego Fresco was even rhythmically similar to Abuela's Kitchen. 3 syllables, Spanish, with an apostrophe and a warm tone. I went to the restaurant. I sat down. I ordered the birria quesadilla. When it came, I took one bite and almost cried. It was not as good as mine. The consomme was thin and they were using pre-made tortillas. But the flavor profile was unmistakable. Someone had reverse engineered my recipe, not from watching videos, from tasting the food, up close, in detail, with notes. I felt sick. I went home and sat in my truck in the parking lot of my apartment and stared at the menu they had posted online. Their website said, inspired by authentic Mexican street food traditions. Traditions, like they had traveled to Oaxaca instead of driving to my truck window on 6th and Chicon. I want to tell you about the first time someone tried to copy my food, because it happened long before Fuego Fresco, about a year. Into the food truck, a man came to my window and ordered one of everything. He paid with a credit card and tipped well. He took photographs of every dish. At the time, I thought he was a food blogger. He came back 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Same order, same photographs, same questions. What kind of chili is in this? Is this a beer braise? How long do you cook the carnitas? I answered because that is what I do. I am a cook. I love talking about food. My grandmother talked about food the way poets talk about sunsets, with reverence and detail, and the assumption that anyone listening would want to know more. 2 months later, a new taco stand opened at a farmer's market across town. The menu was almost identical to mine. The birria, the elote, the chipotle crema. The flavor was off, the mole was too sweet, and the carnitas were overcooked. But the concept was clearly mine. I drove over there one Saturday and looked at the menu board. I recognized nothing about the operator. He was a white man in his 40s, wearing a chef's coat and an apron with a logo that said, Authentic Street Eats. I asked him where his recipes came from. He said, family traditions. He was from Ohio. I did not have the money or the knowledge to do anything about it. I went home and felt sick and told myself it was flattery. That is what people tell you when someone steals from you and you cannot fight back. It is flattery. No, it is theft. But I did not know that yet. When Fuego Fresco happened, I knew exactly what it was from the first bite. And this time, I was not going to call it flattery. Fuego Fresco expanded fast. 3 locations in 6 months. They had investor money. They had a marketing team. They had a social media presence that looked suspiciously similar to mine. The same overhead shots of sizzling meat, the same warm-toned filters, the same casual voiceover style. My sales started dropping, not because my food got worse, because people thought Fuego Fresco was the original and I was the knockoff. A customer actually told me once, "Hey, your tacos taste just like Fuego Fresco." I wanted to scream. I hired a lawyer. Her name was Carmen Delgado. She was a Latina intellectual property attorney who had handled food industry disputes before. She was expensive, but she agreed to a payment plan because, her words, "I'm not going to let a chain steal a Mexican grandmother's recipes and get away with it." We filed a lawsuit for trade dress infringement, unfair competition, and misappropriation of trade secrets. We argued that my recipes, my menu structure, my visual branding, and my unique food combinations constituted protectable intellectual property. Fuego Fresco's legal team, a corporate firm called Blake, Mitchell, and Horn, filed a motion to dismiss. Their argument was simple: you cannot copyright a taco. The judge denied the motion. We went to hearing. I showed up with Carmen and a rolling suitcase full of evidence. Fuego Fresco showed up with 4 attorneys, a paralegal, and a projected confidence that comes from having more money than the other side. Their lead attorney, a man named James Whitaker, presented their defense. He argued that Mexican food is part of a shared culinary tradition and that no individual can claim ownership over techniques and ingredients that have been used for centuries. He said my recipes were common knowledge. He said my branding was generic. He said my TikTok videos were public domain inspiration, not proprietary content. Then he looked at me and said the line that made every person in my family's WhatsApp group vibrate with rage. Your Honor, this woman sells tacos from a truck. She has no trademark. She has no patent on a recipe. She is not a brand. She is a street vendor. Carmen let him finish. Then she stood up. She started with a timeline. She showed my TikTok videos. I've dated timestamped with view counts. A view dam posted 18 to 24 months before Fuego Fresco existed. She showed videos of me making every dish they now served. The birria, the mole, the crema, the carnitas, all documented, all public, all predating the chain by at least a year and a half. She showed my food truck permit, dated 3 years before Fuego Fresco's first business filing. She showed my social media accounts, with hundreds of thousands of followers, built organically over 2 years of daily content. She showed press coverage, the Austin Monthly cover, the Food Critic reviews, the travel shows segments, all identifying me as the creator of these specific dishes. Then she showed the visual comparison, my truck next to their restaurant, the color schemes, the lettering styles, the menu layouts. She put them side by side on the courtroom screen, and the similarity was so striking that one of Fuego Fresco's own attorneys shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Then Carmen presented the digital evidence. She had subpoenaed Fuego Fresco's internal communications, emails, Slack messages, text chains. What they showed was damning. 6 months before Fuego Fresco launched, the CEO, a man named Derek Baines, who had previously run a chain of burger restaurants, sent an email to his business partner that said, "Found a food truck in East Austin that is blowing up. Menu is incredible. The woman running it has no trademark, no LLC, nothing. We replicate the menu, scale it to sit down, and we are the brand. She is too small to fight back." Carmen read that email out loud, slowly. She is too small to fight back. The courtroom was quiet. Whitaker stopped writing notes. Baines, who was in the gallery, did not move. But Carmen was not done. She had one more piece of evidence, one that changed the entire case. She called a witness, a man named Luis Guzman. He stood up from the back row of the gallery. He was in his 30s, wearing a button-down shirt, looking nervous. He walked to the witness stand and stated his name and his former position, assistant manager at Fuego Fresco's original location. Carmen asked him how he came to be involved in the case. He said he had reached out to my legal team 3 weeks earlier, after seeing the lawsuit reported in the news. Then she asked him to describe what he had witnessed during his employment. He said that 2 months before the restaurant opened, Baines had hired a woman to visit my food truck repeatedly, at least 15 times, posing as a regular customer. She ordered every item on the menu. She took photographs of each dish from multiple angles. She asked me questions about the ingredients, casually, like a curious foodie, and reported back to the development team. Luis said the kitchen team then spent 6 weeks reverse engineering every recipe from those photographs, notes, and taste tests. He also said that Baines had created a private WhatsApp group for the development team. Carmen asked him if he had screenshots. He did. She projected them on the courtroom screen. The first message was from Baines. It was a photograph of my food truck, taken from across the street. The caption read, "This is the target. Copy everything. Menu, look, vibe, all of it." The second message, sent a week later, was a photograph of my birria quesadilla. Baines had written, "Get this exactly right. This is the dish that is going to make us millions." The third message was the one that made the judge take off her glasses. It was from Baines to the group, sent the week before the restaurant opened. It said, "She is poor. She is a street vendor. She does not have a lawyer. Even if she notices, she cannot afford to fight us. Copy everything and do not worry about it." Carmen read it out loud. "She is poor. She does not have a lawyer. Copy everything and do not worry about it." She looked at Whitaker. "Counselor, your client was right about one thing. My client did not have a lawyer at the time. She does now." The judge looked at Baines. Baines looked at the table. The judge ruled in my favor on all counts. She found that Fuego Fresco had engaged in deliberate and systematic misappropriation of my intellectual property, trade dress, and culinary creations. She awarded full damages, including disgorgement of profits from every dish that originated in my kitchen, which according to the financial records Carmen obtained, represented approximately 70% of Fuego Fresco's total revenue across all 3 locations. The total damages were $2.4 million. She also issued an injunction requiring Fuego Fresco to immediately remove every dish derived from my menu, redesign their branding, and publicly acknowledge the origins of the recipes they had used. Whitaker asked for an appeal. The judge said, "You are welcome to try, but I suggest your client consider whether a jury will be any more sympathetic to a man who sent a spy to steal a grandmother's recipes." After the hearing, Luis found me in the hallway. He shook my hand and said, "I worked there for 4 months. The food was never as good as yours. They could copy the ingredients, but they could not copy whatever it is you put in it." I said, "That is because you cannot copy love. My grandmother tried to explain that to me when I was 5. It took me 35 years to understand what she meant." Derek Baines resigned from Fuego Fresco 2 weeks later. The investors pulled out. 2 of the 3 locations closed within a year. The 3rd is still open under new management with an entirely different menu. I have been told the Birria Quesadilla is not on it anymore. I am still on the corner of 6th and Chicon. Same truck, same generator that smells like burning hair, same menu. I have not changed a single thing except the line, which is longer now, and the sign, which has a small addition at the bottom. It reads, "Original recipes since 2019, copied by many, owned by one. My grandmother passed 5 years ago. She never saw the food truck. She never saw the TikTok videos or the magazine cover or the courtroom. But she is in every dish I make. Every time I grind chiles, she is standing beside me. Every time I check the masa, I hear her voice. The dough tells you what it wants. You just have to listen. If you are listening to this and someone has stolen your work, your recipes, your designs, your ideas, your art, do not let anyone tell you that you are too small to fight. Do not let anyone tell you that what you built does not matter because it came from a truck instead of a building. The size of your kitchen does not determine the size of your claim. The only thing that matters is the truth. And if you documented it, if you filmed it, if you put it out into the world with your name on it, the truth is already there, waiting. And if someone ever says you are too poor to hire a lawyer, remember this. There is always a lawyer out there who is angry enough to fight for free. You just have to find her." The judge looked at my late husband's sister and said, "Ma'am, what is your relationship to the child?" She said, "I am her aunt, her real family." Then the judge looked at me and asked the same question. And before I could answer, a small voice from the gallery said, "She is my mom." Everyone turned around. Sophie was standing on the bench in the 3rd row, 13 years old, holding a purple notebook against her chest, and she was not going to let anyone take her away from me without a fight. "My name is Claire. I am 32 years old, and I want to tell you what it means to love a child who is not yours by blood, but is yours in every way that matters. And what happens when the law says that might not be enough. I met David when I was 25. He was 37, a widower and a single father to an 8-year-old girl named Sophie. His first wife, Laura, had died of ovarian cancer when Sophie was 3. David had raised her alone for 5 years before I came along. He worked as a high school history teacher and coached the junior varsity basketball team. He was the kind of man who remembered every student's name from every year he had taught, and he had been teaching for 14 years. Our first date was at a diner. He told me within the first 20 minutes that he had a daughter and that she was the center of his universe. He said, "If you are going to be in my life, you need to know that she comes first. Always. No exceptions." I said, "Good. That is exactly how it should be." I met Sophie 2 months later. David was cautious. He did not want to introduce someone into her life unless he was sure it was serious. When he finally brought me to the house, Sophie was sitting on the porch steps reading a Harry Potter book. She looked up at me, sized me up the way only an 8-year-old can, and said, "Do you like dogs?" I said, "I love dogs. We do not have one," she said. "But if you are going to be around, maybe we can get one." That was our beginning. Not romantic, not dramatic, just a little girl on a porch and a question about dogs. I moved in a year later. David and I got married 6 months after that in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Sophie was our witness. She wore a yellow dress and held a bouquet of wildflowers she had picked from the backyard. When the judge pronounced us married, Sophie said, "Finally, I want to be clear about something. I did not try to replace Laura. I never called myself Sophie's mother. Not at first. I put her to bed at night and helped her with homework and drove her to gymnastics and dance class and sat in the front row at every recital and every school assembly. But I always said, 'Your mom would be so proud of you.' I kept Laura's photographs on the walls. I kept her favorite vase on the shelf in the living room. I made sure Sophie knew who her mother was, even though she barely remembered her. But kids know. Kids know who was there. And over time, Sophie started calling me Mom, not because anyone asked her to, Not because David suggested it. She just started. One evening, about a year after the wedding, she was doing math homework and she called out, "Mom, can you help me with fractions?" I was in the kitchen. I froze. David was sitting on the couch. He looked at me and his eyes were wet, and he nodded like he was saying, "It is okay. You earned that." For the next 4 years, I was Sophie's mother in every way except on paper. I packed her lunches. I braided her hair. I taught her to ride a bicycle in the park behind our house. She fell 7 times and got back on 8. I stayed up with her when she had nightmares. I held her when a girl at school said something mean about her not having a real mom. I said, "I am as real as it gets, kiddo." She hugged me so tight, I could feel her heartbeat. David and I talked about adoption. He wanted me to legally adopt Sophie. We started the paperwork twice. Both times, something got in the way. Money, timing, David's school schedule, my job situation. We kept saying next year. Next year became next year, became next year. Then David was killed. A drunk driver ran a red light on a Tuesday evening in March. David was driving home from a basketball game at the school. He was 2 miles from our house. The police officer who came to the door said he died on impact. He did not suffer. That is what they always say. I do not know if it is true. Sophie was 12. She was upstairs doing homework when the officer knocked. I had to walk up those stairs and tell her. I had to sit on her bed and hold her hands and tell her that the only parent she had left by blood was gone. She looked at me and said, "But I still have you, right?" "Always," I said. "You have me always." There's a moment in the first year after David died that I need to tell you about, because it shows you who Sophie is and why that diary mattered. It was about 3 months after the funeral. Sophie had started pulling away. At school, her grades dropped. She stopped going to gymnastics. She spent most evenings in her room with the door closed. I tried everything. Talking to her, giving her space, suggesting a therapist, offering to watch movies together. Nothing worked. One night, I knocked on her door. No answer. I opened it. She was lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She did not look at me. "Sophie, can we talk?" "About what?" "About anything. About how you are feeling." She sat up slowly. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said something that split me open. "Are you going to leave too?" "What?" "Everyone leaves. My real mom left. My dad left. Are you going to leave?" I sat on the bed beside her. I took her hands. They were cold. "I am never leaving. Do you hear me? I am never, ever leaving." "You cannot promise that. People die." "You are right. I cannot promise I will not die. But I can promise that as long as I am breathing, I am here. I am not choosing to leave. Not ever. Not for any reason." She looked at me. Her eyes were red. She said, "Do you promise? Like a real promise? Like a real promise?" She leaned into me and cried. For the first time since David died, she actually cried. Not the polite, controlled kind. The ugly, snotty, shaking kind. The kind that means the dam has finally broken. I held her and rocked her and did not say anything, because there was nothing to say that would be better than just being there. The next morning, she came downstairs for breakfast. She was wearing her gymnastics leotard. She said, "Can you drive me to practice?" That was the day she came back. Not all the way, not all at once, but she started, and she never stopped. When Margaret filed for custody 2 months later, I understood why Sophie brought that diary to court. She was not just showing the judge who raised her. She was keeping her real promise. She was making sure nobody took me away. 2 weeks later, David's sister showed up. Her name was Margaret. She lived in Connecticut. She had met Sophie maybe 8 or 9 times in her entire life. She had not come to our wedding. She had not come to David's funeral. She sent flowers and a card that said, "In deepest sympathy." She was not a bad person exactly. She was a distant person, the kind of person who remembers you exist when something happens that affects them. Margaret knocked on our door on a Saturday morning. She was wearing a black coat and carrying a folder. She said she was concerned about Sophie. She said she had been thinking about what was best for the child. She said she believed Sophie should come live with her in Connecticut. I said no. I said I was Sophie's mother. I said we had been a family for 5 years. I said Sophie's school, her friends, her life, everything she knew was here. Margaret said, "Claire, I appreciate what you have done, but legally, you are not her mother. You are her father's second wife, and now that David is gone, you have no legal claim to this child." She was right. David and I never finished the adoption. There was no legal document in the world that said Sophie was my daughter. Biologically, I was a stranger. Legally, I was nothing. Margaret filed for custody. Her attorney, a man named Gerald Oakes, argued that Margaret was Sophie's closest living blood relative and that I had no legal standing. He argued that Sophie would benefit from being raised by actual family in a stable environment. I could barely afford a lawyer. David's life insurance was tied up in probate. I had my salary from working as a dental office manager, $44,000 a year, and a mortgage that David's income had been helping to cover. I found a family law attorney named Priya Nair who agreed to a reduced fee because she said, "This is the kind of case that reminds me why I went to law school." The hearing was set for 2 months after David's death. 2 months. That is all the time the court gave me to prove that 5 years of motherhood counted for something. Priya built our case carefully. She gathered evidence of my role in Sophie's life. School records listing me as the emergency contact and the parent who attended every conference. Medical records from Sophie's pediatrician, showing I was the one who brought her to every appointment. Letters from Sophie's teachers, her gymnastics coach, her dance instructor, and 3 of her friends' parents, all confirming that I was Sophie's primary caregiver and that Margaret was, in their experience, non-existent. She also obtained records showing that Margaret had visited Sophie exactly 9 times in 13 years. 9 times. She had never babysat. She had never taken Sophie for a weekend. She had never attended a school event, a recital, or a birthday party. Margaret's attorney countered with the one argument that carried legal weight: blood. Margaret was David's sister. I was not related to Sophie at all, in the eyes of the law in many jurisdictions. Blood. Family has priority. The day of the hearing, I wore a blue dress. David had told me once that I looked beautiful in blue. I do not know if that mattered, but it helped me walk through those courtroom doors. Margaret was there with Oakes. She was composed, professional. She had a folder full of documents, her financial statements, her house in Connecticut, her employment record. She had built a case on paper that made her look like a stable, loving family member who was stepping up in a crisis. Oakes went first. He presented the legal argument: no adoption, no legal guardianship, no biological connection. Under state law, he argued, Margaret had the stronger claim. He was polished. He was calm. He made it sound reasonable. Then Priya presented our case: the school records, the medical records, the letters, 5 years of receipts, and carpool schedules and bedtime routines, and braided hair and packed lunches. She built a picture of a life, a real life, a daily life, that Margaret had never been part of. The judge listened carefully. Then she said, "I would like to hear from the child if both parties agree." Oakes hesitated. Priya agreed immediately. The judge said they would bring Sophie in. But before the bailiff could move, a voice came from the gallery. "I am already here." Everyone turned around. Sophie was standing on the bench in the 3rd row, 13 years old, purple notebook against her chest. She had come to the courthouse on her own. She had taken the city bus. She had told my neighbor she was going to the library. That girl had always been smarter than every adult in the room. The judge said, "Young lady, please come forward." Sophie walked to the front of the courtroom. She was shaking, but her chin was up. She sat in the witness chair, which was too big for her, and she folded her hands in her lap. The judge asked her, "Sophie, do you understand what this hearing is about?" "Yes, my aunt wants to take me away from my mom." Margaret shifted in her seat. Oakes started to say something. The judge held up her hand. "When you say your mom, who do you mean?" "Claire. She is my mom. She has been my mom since I was 8. And your Aunt Margaret?" Sophie thought for a moment. "She sends me a birthday card every year. Sometimes it is late. She came to visit once when I was 9 and took me to get ice cream and asked me if I was happy. I said yes. She did not come back for 2 years." The judge asked, "Is there anything else you would like the court to know?" Sophie opened the purple notebook. "I started writing in this diary when I was 9. Claire, my mom, gave it to me. She said writing things down helps you understand your feelings." She turned to a page near the beginning. "This is from when I was 9. It says, 'Today, Mommy Claire taught me to ride my bike. I fell a lot. She kept saying, 'Get back on.' I did. She cheered every time. I love her so much." She turned to another page. "This is from when I was 10. Mommy Claire braided my hair for picture day. She put little flowers in it. Daddy said I looked like a princess. I said I looked like Mommy. He cried a little, but he was smiling." She turned to one more page. "This is from last month, after my dad died." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "I am so scared. Everything is different now, but Claire holds my hand every night and tells me we are going to be okay. She is the only person in the whole world who makes me feel safe. If someone takes me away from her, I do not know what I will do. She is my mom. She is my only mom. Please, God, do not let anyone take her away from me." Sophie closed the notebook. She looked at the judge. She looked at Margaret. Then she looked at me. "I do not want to go to Connecticut. I want to stay with my mom. She is my home." The courtroom was silent. The judge took off her glasses. She pressed her fingertips against her eyes for a moment. Margaret was crying, not performatively, quietly. Something had cracked. Oakes did not speak. He did not object. He did not ask to cross-examine a 13-year-old girl who had just read from her diary in front of strangers. The judge ruled in my favor. She granted me full legal guardianship with a recommendation that the formal adoption process be expedited. She said, "The law recognizes blood, but this court recognizes love, and the evidence before me is overwhelming that this child's home, this child's safety, and this child's emotional well-being are with the woman She calls Mom. After the hearing, Margaret came up to me in the hallway. She looked exhausted. She said, I was not trying to hurt her. I just thought she is David's. She should be with David's family. I said, she is with David's family. David chose me, and Sophie chose me. That is the family he built. Margaret nodded. She did not say anything else. She hugged Sophie for a long time. Sophie let her. Then Margaret left. The adoption was finalized 4 months. Later, I have the document framed on the wall in the hallway, right next to Sophie's school photos, and a picture of David at a basketball game, smiling that smile. Sophie is 14 now. She still writes in the purple notebook. She is taller than me. She rolls her eyes when I tell bad jokes. She is starting to like boys, which terrifies me. She is the best thing in my life. We got the dog, by the way. His name is David. Sophie named him. If you are listening to this and you are raising a child who is not yours by blood, a stepchild, a foster child, a niece, a nephew, a friend's kid, hear me. You are their parent. You are. Not because of a document, not because of DNA, because you showed up, because you braided their hair and packed their lunch and held their hand in the dark. That is what a parent is. That is all a parent is. And one day, if you are lucky, they will look at a judge and say, she is my mom. And nothing in the world will ever mean more than that. His lawyer pointed at me and said, Your Honor, this woman was 19 years old when her parents died. She had no legal authority to manage their estate. She took $180,000, meant for 5 children, and spent it on herself, and now she wants sympathy for it. I sat there and felt every eye in the courtroom on me. My youngest brother, the one I had changed diapers for, the one I had walked to kindergarten, the one I had put through medical school, was sitting across from me, with his jaw set like stone. He would not look at me. He had not looked at me since he filed the lawsuit, and I realized, sitting there, that you can give someone everything and still end up with nothing. My name is Gabriela. I am 34 years old, and when I was 19, I became a mother to 4 children overnight, not by choice, by necessity, because our parents drove into a bridge abutment on a rainy Tuesday night. And there was nobody else. Let me tell you about that night, because it is where everything starts. I was a freshman at State, first in my family to go to college. I was studying biology, dreaming about medical school, living in a dorm room though the size of a closet, eating ramen because the meal plan ran out before the semester did. I was 19. I was free. For the first time in my life, I had a room to myself and nobody to take care of except me. Then the phone rang at 11:47 on a Tuesday. It was the hospital. They said my parents, Maria and Eduardo Sandoval, had been in a car accident. They said I should come quickly. By the time I got there, they were both gone. My father died at the scene. My mother died in the ambulance. The doctor who told me was younger than I expected. He had kind eyes and a voice that was too gentle, the way people talk when they are about to hand you something that will break you. I stood in that hospital hallway and understood, before anyone said it out loud, that my life as I knew it was over. My siblings were at home. Carlos was 16. Daniela was 13. The twins, Marco and Leo, were 8. They were with a neighbor, a woman named Mrs. Gutierrez, who had come over when she saw the police car in our driveway. When I got home at 3 in the morning, Mrs. Gutierrez was sitting on the couch, and all 4 kids were asleep around her. Carlos on the recliner, Daniela curled up on the floor with a pillow, Marco and Leo on either end of the couch. Mrs. Gutierrez looked at me and said, I am so sorry, mija. Then she asked me the question that would define the next 15 years of my life. What are you going to do? I withdrew from college the next day. I moved back home. I filed for guardianship of all 4 siblings. The court granted it because there was no one else. My parents had no extended family in this country. There were aunts and uncles in Mexico, but none who could take 4 children. There was my parents' will, which left everything to me and my siblings equally. Everything was the house. A car with 160,000 miles on it, and a savings account with $180,000. $180,000. That is what I had to raise 4 children from ages 8 to 16 until adulthood. I sat at the kitchen table the night I got the bank statement and divided 180,000 by the number of years until the twins turned 18. 10 years, 18,000 a year, 1,500 a month. It was not enough. It was not even close to enough, but it was what we had. I got 3 jobs. I worked mornings at a dry cleaner, pressing shirts from 6 to noon. I worked afternoons at a grocery store, stocking shelves from 1 to 5. On weekends, I cleaned houses. I slept 5 hours a night. I ate whatever the kids did not finish. I washed my clothes in the bathtub when I could not afford the laundromat. The 180,000 went to keeping us alive. Mortgage payments, utilities, food, clothes for kids who grew out of everything every 6 months, school supplies, Carlos's SAT prep course, Daniela's braces, the twins' asthma medication, which cost $240 a month even with the discount card. But I kept every receipt. From the beginning, I kept every single receipt, not because I thought someone would check, because my mother had been organized, and I wanted to honor that. I put them in shoeboxes, one for each year, 15 shoeboxes, every dollar accounted for. Carlos graduated from high school and got into a state university. I paid his tuition from the savings. Daniela graduated 2 years later. I paid hers too. Marco went to community college, then transferred to a 4-year program. I paid every bill that the financial aid did not cover. Then there was Leo. Leo was the youngest twin by 4 minutes, and the smartest person in the family by a mile. He got into medical school, not just any medical school, Johns Hopkins, full ride, for tuition, but living expenses, books, equipment, board exams, those were on us, on me. I paid for it. I emptied what was left of the savings. I took out a loan against the house. I worked a 4th job for 2 years, overnight shifts at a warehouse, to cover the gap. Leo graduated from medical school last spring. He is now a resident in surgery at one of the best hospitals in the country. I went to his graduation. I sat in the audience in the same dress I had worn to our parents' funeral, because it was still the nicest thing I owned. When they called his name, I cried so hard the woman next to me handed me her entire packet of tissues. 3 months after graduation, Leo filed a lawsuit against me. His lawyer, a man named Aaron Pace, argued that I had mismanaged the estate, that I had used funds designated for all 5 siblings disproportionately, that I had spent $147,000 more than my equal share of $36,000. He demanded I pay restitution to all 4 siblings with interest. When I got the papers, I sat on the kitchen floor, the same kitchen where I had divided $180,000 by 10 years and known it would not be enough, and I tried to understand how the boy I had carried to the school bus every morning for 3 years could do this to me. I called Carlos. He was furious, not at me, at Leo. He said, "I will be at that hearing." I called Daniela. She cried and said, "He has lost his mind." I called Marco. He said, "Tell me when and where. I want to tell you about one specific night because it captures everything about those 15 years in a single memory." It was December 23rd. The twins were 10. Carlos was 18 and had just been accepted to college. Daniela was 15 and going through a phase where she thought everything I did was embarrassing. I had been working since 5 in the morning, dry cleaner, then grocery store, then a house cleaning in the suburbs that ran 2 hours over because the woman wanted me to also organize her garage. I got home at 8:30. The house was dark. I walked in and turned on the kitchen light, and there, on the table, was a cake, a lopsided, half-burned, frosting-smeared chocolate cake with "Thank you, Gabi" written on it in wobbly letters. The twins were hiding behind the couch. Carlos was standing in the corner trying not to laugh. Daniela, the one who thought I was embarrassing, was holding a lighter and a single candle. "We made you a cake," Leo said, popping up from behind the couch. "Marco burned it a little." "I did not burn it," Marco said. "The oven is broken." "The oven is fine," Carlos said. "You set it to 450 instead of 350. They argued about it for 10 minutes. I stood there holding my work bag, covered in dust from the garage, with cracked hands and aching feet, looking at the worst cake I had ever seen, and I thought, this is enough. This right here, this lopsided, burned, beautiful thing. This is worth every morning I woke up at 5 and every night I went to bed at midnight. This is the whole point. I think about that cake every time I look at the receipt boxes, because the receipts tell one story. The numbers, the costs, the math of survival. But the cake tells the real story. The story of 4 kids who saw their sister killing herself to keep them alive and decided, on a random Tuesday in December, to say thank you with flour and sugar and a broken oven. Leo was one of those kids. He was behind that couch. He helped make that cake, and 15 years later, he hired a lawyer to sue me for the money I spent keeping him alive long enough to become a doctor. I keep a photograph of that cake on my refrigerator. I have never taken it down, and if Leo ever comes back, if he ever walks through that door and sits at that table, the photograph will still be there. The chair will still be open, and I will probably make him a cake. That is better than the one they made me, because that is what I do. I feed people, even when they bite the hand that feeds them. I hired a lawyer, a woman named Janet Odom, who took the case at a reduced rate because she said, "I raised my younger siblings too. I know what it costs." Janet built the case methodically. She obtained every bank statement from the estate account. She cross-referenced them with my shoeboxes. 15 years of receipts, every mortgage payment, every grocery run, every medical bill, every tuition check, every single dollar, tracked and documented. She also obtained records of what each sibling had received. Carlos, 4 years of college tuition and living expenses, approximately $41,000. Daniela, 4 years of college, approximately $39,000. Marco, community college, plus transfer, approximately $22,000. Leo, medical school, living expenses, board exam fees, and supplemental costs, approximately $58,000. Leo had received more than anyone, more than me. I had taken $0 for myself. Zero. Not a penny of that $180,000 went to my education, my car, my clothing, my anything. I withdrew from college at 19 and never went back. Every dollar went to the house and to my siblings. The hearing was on a Wednesday morning. I wore a cardigan and slacks from a consignment store. Leo was across the aisle in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly income. Pace was beside him, organized and confident. Pace presented Leo's case. He argued that I had acted without oversight, that I had made unilateral financial decisions, and that the estate should have been divided equally into 5 shares of $36,000 each. He said I had spent $47,000 on housing alone. A personal benefit, he called it, since I lived in the house too. Janet stood up. She placed the 15 shoeboxes on the table, one for each year. Your Honor, these boxes contain every receipt for every dollar Ms. Sandoval spent from the estate over 15 years, every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every grocery receipt, every medical copay, every tuition check. She opened the first box, year 1. She pulled out a receipt. September 14th, $23.47. Backpacks for the twins. Marco and Leo. She pulled out another. October 2nd, $48. Winter coats for Carlos and Daniela from the Salvation Army store. She pulled out another. November 19th, $240. Asthma medication for Marco and Leo. Monthly cost. She did this for 10 minutes. Receipt after receipt. Year after year. Small amounts that added up to a lifetime of sacrifice. Then she presented the summary. A spreadsheet showing every dollar spent, categorized by sibling. The total for Leo was $58,000, more than any other sibling, and 16% more than his supposed equal share of $36,000. Mr. Sandoval is suing his sister for spending his inheritance, Janet said. But the evidence shows that she spent more on him than on anyone else, and she spent nothing on herself. Then Janet asked a question I had not expected. Your Honor, may I call witnesses? The judge agreed. Carlos stood up from the gallery. He walked to the witness stand. He stated his name and his relationship to me. Janet asked him, Mr. Sandoval, in your estimation, who raised you after your parents died? Carlos looked at me. Gabriela did. She was my mother, my father, my teacher, my everything. She was 19 years old and she gave up her entire life for us. Janet asked, did she ever spend estate funds on herself? Never. She wore the same shoes for 3 years. She ate our leftovers for dinner. She worked 3 jobs so we could go to school. She did not buy herself a new coat until I bought her one for Christmas when I got my first real job. Janet asked, do you support this lawsuit? No. It is the most ungrateful thing I have ever seen. Daniela went next. She said essentially the same thing. She added, Gabi braided my hair every morning before school for 5 years. She came to every parent-teacher conference. She was the one who explained my period to me because our mother was not there to do it. She did everything. Everything. Marco went last. He stood in the witness stand and looked directly at Leo. You were 8 when Mom and Dad died. Do you remember who carried you to the bus stop every morning when you were too scared to walk by yourself? Gabi. Do you remember who sat with you in the emergency room when you had an asthma attack at 2 in the morning? Gabi. Do you remember who filled out your medical school applications because you said you were too stressed to do it yourself? Gabi. He paused. She gave up her life for us, all of us, and now you are suing her because a lawyer told you. There was money on the table. You should be ashamed of yourself. The courtroom was silent. Leo was looking at the table. Pace was not writing. The judge ruled in my favor. He dismissed the lawsuit in its entirety. He said, the evidence before this court shows not mismanagement, but extraordinary sacrifice. Ms. Sandoval did not take from her siblings. She gave to them. She gave them everything she had, including the future she was supposed to have for herself. He looked at Leo. Mr. Sandoval, your sister put you through medical school. She worked 4 jobs to do it. The fact that you are sitting in this courtroom in that suit, with that degree, is because of the woman you are suing. I hope one day you understand that. After the hearing, Carlos, Daniela, Marco, and I went to a diner. We sat in a booth and ordered pancakes. Nobody talked about the case. Daniela showed pictures of her baby. Carlos complained about his boss. Marco told a bad joke, and we all laughed. Leo was not there. He has not called since the hearing. I do not know if he will. But the chair is open. It is always open, because that is what I do. I keep the chairs open and I make sure there is enough food and I wait. That is what Gabriela Sandoval does. That is what she has always done. If you are listening to this and you are the one who stayed, the one who gave up college, the one who worked 3 jobs, the one who raised the kids nobody else was willing to raise, I see you. The world may not see you. The courts may not see you. The people you sacrificed for may not even see you, but I see you, and what you did matters. What you did is the most important thing a human being can do. You kept a family together when it was supposed to fall apart. You do not need a receipt for that, but keep them anyway, just in case. The university investigator looked at me across the table and said, "We have received a formal complaint that your financial aid application contains inaccurate information, specifically that your family's income was misrepresented to qualify for a full scholarship." She said it evenly, like she was describing a parking violation, like she was not about to destroy the thing my parents had sacrificed 20 years for. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, not from guilt, from rage, because I knew exactly who had filed that complaint. And I knew exactly why. My name is Isabel Morales. I am 25 years old. I am the daughter of 2 immigrants from the Dominican Republic who came to this country with nothing and built a life out of absolutely nothing more than hard work and hope. And some girl who grew up in a 5-bedroom house decided that I did not deserve to be in the same room as her. Let me tell you about my parents first. My father, Miguel, came to the United States when he was 21. He spoke almost no English. He had a 7th grade education. He got a job washing dishes at a restaurant near the university campus. The same university I would later attend, though neither of us knew that at the time. He has worked at that restaurant for 23 years. He started as a dishwasher. He is still a dishwasher, not because he lacks ambition, because the restaurant does not promote dishwashers. They just hire new ones when the old ones leave. My father never left. My mother, Carmen, came 2 years later. She worked as a house cleaner. She cleaned the homes of professors and administrators and wealthy families in the neighborhoods around the university. She cleaned the home of the university president once. She told me about it, how big the kitchen was, how many bathrooms, how many rooms nobody seemed to use. She said, "Someday, mija, you are going to live in a house like that." I said, "I would rather work in one, mommy," as the boss. Together, my parents made about $23,000 in a year. Some years more, some years less. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. My sister and I shared a room. The walls were thin enough that you could hear the washing machines running at night. And for the first 10 years of my life, I thought that rhythmic thumping was just what nighttime sounded like. I was a good student, not because I was naturally brilliant, because failure was not an option. My parents had given up everything, their country, their language, their families, their comfort, so that I could sit in the classroom. Every test I took, every essay I wrote, every grade I earned was carrying the weight of that sacrifice. I could not waste it. I graduated valedictorian of my high school class. I scored in the 98th percentile on the SAT. I was captain of the debate team. I volunteered at a free legal clinic on weekends. I applied to one university, the one where my father washed dishes, because it was close to home and they had a full scholarship program for first-generation, low-income students. I got the scholarship. Full tuition, room and full board, books, everything. When the acceptance letter came, my father held it in his hands for a long time. He could not read most of it. It was in English, and his reading skills were limited. But he understood the word scholarship. He understood congratulations. He looked at me and said, in Spanish, "You did it, mija. You did what we came here for." I moved into the dorm. I was the first person in my family to attend a university. I was terrified. The other students had laptops. I had a used Chromebook my guidance counselor had given me. The other students talked about gap years in Europe and summer internships at their parents' companies. I talked about whether the financial aid office would process my book voucher before classes started. But I worked. I worked like my parents worked, quietly, stubbornly, without complaint. By my junior year, I was at the top of my class. Dean's List every semester, published in the undergraduate research journal, offered a teaching assistant position in the political science department. That is when I met Ashley Davenport. Ashley was a senior. Her father was a hedge fund manager. Her mother sat on the university's board of trustees. Ashley lived in a single suite in the honors residence hall, drove a white BMW, and wore clothes that cost more than my monthly food budget. She was not stupid. She was smart enough to coast, which is a different kind of intelligence, the kind that knows exactly how little effort is required to maintain the appearance of excellence. We were in the same constitutional law seminar. 20 students. The professor graded on a curve. I was first. Ashley was second. She did not like being second. At first, the hostility was subtle. A comment in class about people who get unfair advantages. A question during a discussion about affirmative action that was clearly directed at me, even though she did not use my name. A smile in the hallway that had no warmth in it. Then it became specific. Ashley started telling people that my scholarship was fraudulent. She said she had looked into it and that my family's income had been misrepresented on the application. She said I had exaggerated my financial need to steal a scholarship from someone who actually deserved it. None of it was true. My family's income was $23,000. It was verified. The scholarship committee had reviewed our tax returns, pay stubs, and a detailed financial statement. Everything was accurate. Everything was documented. But Ashley's mother sat on the board of trustees, and when Ashley filed a formal complaint through the dean's office, the university could not ignore it. They opened an investigation. They suspended my scholarship pending review. They sent me a letter that used the words potential misrepresentation and academic integrity concerns. I was 21 years old. I was 6 months from graduating, and the thing my parents had spent 20 years building was about to be taken away because a rich girl did not like being second. I could not afford a lawyer. My parents could not afford one either. My father makes $12.60 an hour. My mother makes $11. I called 3 attorneys. They all wanted retainers I did not have. Then I called the free legal clinic where I had volunteered on weekends for 3 years. A woman named Diana Restrepo, who ran the clinic, said, "Come in tomorrow. We will figure this out." Diana filed a defamation and lawsuit against Ashley Davenport on my behalf. She also filed a formal grievance with the university for suspending my scholarship without due process. Ashley's family hired a lawyer, a man named Crawford Wells, from a firm that handled reputation management for wealthy families. His strategy was to bury me in paperwork and make the case too expensive to pursue. Diana was not impressed. She had spent 15 years representing people who could not afford to fight. She was used to being outspent. She was not used to losing. The university hearing came first. I sat in a conference room across from the investigator, a woman named Dr. Patricia Lowe, and 2 members of the scholarship committee. Ashley was not present. Her complaint had been filed anonymously, but everyone knew who filed it. Diana presented my financial documentation, tax returns, pay stubs, the original scholarship application, bank statements, everything verified, everything accurate. She also presented a statement from the IRS, confirming that my parents' reported income was consistent with their filed returns for the past 5 years. Dr. Lowe reviewed everything. She asked a few questions. Then she said, "We find no evidence of misrepresentation. The scholarship is reinstated." But that was only the university matter. The defamation case went to court. The hearing was in March. I showed up with Diana. Ashley showed up with Wells and her mother, who sat in the front row of the gallery, wearing a Chanel jacket and an expression that suggested she had never been in a room this unpleasant. Wells presented Ashley's defense. He argued that Ashley had reasonable concerns about the integrity of the scholarship process. He argued that filing a complaint was protected speech. He argued that no harm had been done because the scholarship was reinstated. Diana stood up. She presented evidence that Ashley had spread false statements to at least 14 people, classmates, professors, and university staff, claiming that my application was fraudulent. She presented text messages between Ashley and 3 friends, where Ashley wrote things like, "Her dad is a janitor or something. There's no way she qualifies," and "I'm going to get that scholarship revoked. She does not belong here." She also presented evidence of the harm, the 6 weeks I spent without a scholarship, the stress that caused my grades to drop for the first time in my academic career, the anxiety attacks that sent me to the campus health center twice, a letter from my therapist documenting the psychological impact. Then Diana did something I was not prepared for. She said, "Your Honor, the plaintiff's father is present in the courtroom. With the court's permission, I would like him to make a brief statement." The judge agreed. My father stood up from the back row. He was wearing his work clothes, the word black pants, a white undershirt, and the button-down shirt he put on over it for important things. His hands were still rough from the kitchen. He smelled faintly of dish soap. He walked to the front slowly. The the way he does everything. Deliberately, carefully, like a man who has learned that nothing in this country comes easy and you should not rush toward anything. Diana asked him one question. Mr. Morales, can you tell the court what you do for work? My father looked at the judge. Then he looked at Ashley's mother. Then he turned and looked at Ashley. He spoke in English, slowly, with an accent, but clearly. I wash dishes at the restaurant on campus. I have done this for 23 years. Every day I wash the plates that the students eat from. I wash the plates that this girl, he pointed at Ashley, eats from. I wash them because it is my job and I do not complain. He paused. My daughter is the smartest person I know. She graduated #1 in her high school. She scored higher than everyone in her class. She earned that scholarship. She did not steal it. She earned it the way I earn my paycheck, by working harder than anyone else in the room. He looked at Ashley again. I wash the dishes that your daughter eats from every day, and my daughter is the #1 student in her class. You should be ashamed that your daughter tried to take that away from her. Not because my daughter is an immigrant's child, because my daughter is better. The courtroom was absolutely silent. The judge was very still. Ashley's mother was not looking at anyone. Ashley was staring at the table. The judge ruled in my favor. She found that Ashley's statements constituted defamation per se, false statements of fact that damaged my reputation and caused measurable harm. She awarded damages for emotional distress, loss of scholarship, income during the suspension period, and attorney's fees. But more than the money, she said something from the bench that I will remember for the rest of my life. Ms. Morales earned her place at this university through merit, sacrifice, and extraordinary effort. The attempt to take that from her was not a legitimate complaint. It was cruelty dressed up as concern. This court will not tolerate it. After the hearing, my father and I walked to his car in the parking lot. It was a 2004 Toyota Corolla with a cracked bumper and a rosary hanging from the mirror. He opened my door for me. He always opens my door. We drove home in silence. When we got to the apartment, he went to the kitchen and started making coffee. I sat at the table, the same table where I had done homework for 12 years, and I said, "Papi, thank you for what you said." He set the coffee down in front of me. He sat across from me. He said in Spanish, "I wash dishes every day so that you can sit in those classrooms. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to be proud of. I want to tell you about what those 6 weeks without the scholarship felt like, because people hear scholarship suspended, and they think it is a bureaucratic inconvenience. It is not. It is the ground opening up beneath you. Without the scholarship, I could not pay for my dorm. I had 2 weeks before I would have been moved out. I went to the financial aid office every day for a week. They were sympathetic, but said their hands were tied until the investigation was complete. One woman behind the desk looked at me with genuine pity and whispered, "I am sorry, honey. I know this is not fair." I moved my things into my car. A 2008 Honda Civic that my parents had bought, used for $3,000 when I turned 17. I slept in the back seat in the campus parking garage for 11 nights. I showered at the gym. I went to class with my books in my backpack and my pillow in my trunk, and nobody knew. Nobody except Diana, who found out when she saw me walking out of the parking garage at 6 in the morning with wet hair and a toothbrush in my hand. She said, "Are you sleeping in your car?" I said yes. She said, "Not anymore. You are staying at my office until this is resolved." She had a couch in her back room. It was lumpy and too short, and it was the most comfortable thing I had slept on in 2 weeks. My parents did not know. I did not tell them. If my father had found out his daughter was sleeping in a car while the girl whose plates he washed every day was trying to take her scholarship, I do not know what he would have done, but I know it would have broken something in him that could not be fixed. So I kept it to myself. I kept smiling when they called. I kept saying everything was fine. I kept lying because the truth was too heavy for people who were already carrying too much. Ashley, meanwhile, was posting on social media about integrity in academia and fairness in financial aid. She never used my name. She did not have to. Everyone knew who she was talking about. I lost 3 friends during those 6 weeks. People who were afraid that being associated with me would affect their own standing. People who liked me fine when I was the success story, but disappeared when I became the scandal. That is what privilege does. It does not just give you advantages. It gives you the power to take advantages away from other people. And the worst part is, it costs you nothing. Ashley filed a complaint. It took her 5 minutes. It cost me 6 weeks of my life, my housing, my mental health, and 3 friendships. That is the exchange rate between privilege and poverty. 5 minutes of her time for 6 weeks of mine. I graduated 4 months later, summa cum laude, first in my class. My father was in the audience. He was still wearing the dish soap smell. When they called my name, he stood up and clapped louder than anyone in that auditorium. I am in law school now, full scholarship, first in my class again. My father still washes dishes at the same restaurant. He says he will retire when I pass the bar. I told him I'm going to buy him a house. He said he does not need a house. He needs his daughter to keep going. If you are listening to this and someone has ever told you that you do not belong, because of where you came from, because of what your parents do, because of how much money you did not grow up with, they are wrong. You belong wherever your work puts you. You belong wherever your sacrifice earns you a seat. And if someone tries to take that seat away, you stand up, you present the evidence, and you let the truth do what it has always done. The truth does not care about zip codes. The truth does not care about last names. The truth does not care whose mother sits on the board. The truth just is, and it is enough. Her lawyer stood up and said, "Your Honor, my client conceived the design for this bridge, supervised the engineering process, and brought the project to completion under budget and ahead of schedule. He is the rightful recipient of this award." He said it with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed the sentence 100 times. The man sitting beside him, my former boss, Richard Kavanaugh, nodded along like a puppet, agreeing with its own strings. I sat on the other side of the courtroom in a blouse I had bought at a clearance sale and watched two men take credit for the thing I had built. But I had something they did not. I had the original sketches, I had the emails, and I had the date stamps that proved everything. My name is Amara Johnson. I am 29 years old. I am a structural engineer, and the bridge that Richard Kavanaugh won a national award for, the Whitfield River Crossing, a 240-foot cable-stayed pedestrian bridge that was called the most innovative small-scale infrastructure project of the decade, was designed in my one-bedroom apartment 3 months before I ever set foot in his office. I grew up in Baltimore. My father was a construction worker. He built things for a living: schools, offices, parking garages. He came home every night with concrete dust on his boots and aching shoulders, and stories about the buildings going up around the city. I used to sit on the porch and watch the crane swing across the skyline, and I would ask him, "Daddy, who draws the buildings?" He said, "Engineers, baby. Engineers draw them, and people like me build them." I decided at 9 years old that I was going to be the one who draws them, and I was. I went to Howard University on an academic scholarship, graduated with a degree in civil engineering with a focus on structural design. Top of my class, I had internships at 2 firms during college and designed a footbridge for a community garden project that won a university-level engineering prize. After graduation, I spent 2 years at a mid-size engineering firm doing calculations for other people's designs. It was fine. It paid the bills, but I wanted to design my own structures. I wanted to see something in the world and know that it came from my mind. I started sketching in my spare time. Late at night, at the kitchen table in my apartment, I would draw. Bridges, mostly. I was obsessed with bridges, the way they solved impossible problems. How do you get from here to there when there is nothing in between? How do you span a gap? How do you hold weight with empty space underneath? A bridge is the most honest structure in engineering. It either works or it does not. There is no faking a bridge. The Whitfield River Crossing started as a sketch on a napkin at a coffee shop. I was reading about a small city in Virginia that had been trying to connect 2 parks on either side of a river for 15 years, but could not get the funding or the design right. The river was narrow but deep, the banks were uneven, and the soil conditions were challenging. Every proposal that had been submitted was either too expensive, too conventional, or structurally unsound. I looked at the satellite image of the site. I looked at the geological survey that was available online, and I started drawing a cable-stayed design with an asymmetric pylon, angled to account for the uneven bank heights. The deck would curve slightly to follow the natural line of the river, reducing the load on the cables and creating a pedestrian experience that felt organic rather than imposed. I used a suspension system I had been developing in my notebooks for 2 years, a modified fan arrangement that distributed tension more efficiently than the standard harp pattern. It was elegant, it was buildable, and it was mine. I refined the design over 3 months. I did the structural calculations. I ran basic simulations on software I had purchased with my own money. I sketched the full engineering drawings by hand, 47 pages of plans, details, and specifications. I dated every page. I photographed every sketch. I saved everything. Then I made the mistake that cost me 2 years of my life. I applied for a job at Kavanaugh Engineering Associates. Richard Kavanaugh was the founder and principal engineer. He was 56, well-connected, and had a reputation for delivering projects on time. What he did not have was imagination. His firm did competent work: highways, parking structures, standard commercial buildings, but nothing innovative, nothing that won awards. During my interview, he asked me if I had any personal projects. I showed him the Whitfield River Crossing design. I should not have, I know that now, but I was 26 and eager, and I wanted to impress him. He looked at the drawings for a long time. He asked detailed questions about the suspension system. He asked about the soil analysis. He asked about the cost projections. Then he offered me a job. Junior engineer, $48,000 a year. I took it. Within a week, he asked me to formalize the Whitfield design using the firm's software and templates. He said he wanted to submit it to the city as a bid. He said, this could be a great project for the firm. I was thrilled. I thought he was giving me my shot. I spent 2 months converting my hand-drawn plans into professional engineering documents. I did the work on the firm's systems, using the firm's software, during work hours. I did not think about what that meant legally. I was 26. I trusted my boss. The firm won the bid. The bridge was built. It came in under budget and ahead of schedule, exactly as my design predicted. It was beautiful. It curved over the water exactly the way I had imagined it at that coffee shop. The modified fan suspension worked perfectly. The asymmetric pylon looked like it had grown out of the riverbank. When the bridge was completed, Richard Kavanaugh put his name on it, not the firm's name, his name. He submitted it for the National Engineering Excellence Award. He gave interviews. He posed for photographs on the bridge. He said things like, this design came from months of collaboration and creative leadership. Collaboration. He meant me. He just did not say my name. Then 1 week before the award ceremony, he fired me. He called me into his office on a Friday afternoon, handed me a severance check for 4 weeks' pay, and said the firm was restructuring. He wished me well. He shook my hand, and he walked me to the door. That night, I got a Google alert. The award ceremony was scheduled for the following Saturday. Richard Kavanaugh was listed as the sole recipient. My name was not mentioned anywhere, not in the nomination, not in the press release, not in the project credits. He had hired me to steal my design. He had fired me so I would not be at the ceremony when he accepted the award. I hired a lawyer, a woman named Tamika Ellis, who specialized in intellectual property for engineers and architects. She took one look at my dated sketches and said, this is theft, and we can prove it. We filed a lawsuit for copyright infringement, misappropriation of intellectual property, and wrongful termination in retaliation for asserting authorship. Kavanaugh Tocha's lawyer, a man named Kenneth Rourke, argued that the design was created within the scope of employment and therefore belonged to the firm. Standard work for hire doctrine. He was technically right about the computer files I had created at the office, but he was wrong about the original design. The hearing was in January. I showed up with Tamika and a portfolio case containing every sketch I had made before I was hired. 47 pages. Dated. Photographed. Time-stamped. Rourke presented Kavanaugh's case. He showed the project files from the firm's servers. He showed the engineering documents I had created on company software. He argued that the entire design was firm property. Tamika stood up. She placed my original sketches on the evidence table. 47 pages, drawn by hand on graph paper, dated 3 months before my employment at the firm began. She showed the photographs I had taken of each page, with metadata showing the dates. Then she presented the emails. Discovery had produced a chain between Kavanaugh and his business partner, sent the week after my interview, that said, the girl has a bridge design that could win us the Whitfield bid. Hire her, get the design into our system, and then we own it. Tamika read it out loud. Hire her, get the design into our system, and then we own it. A second email, sent the week before I was fired. The bridge is done. The award submission is in my name. We do not need her anymore. Let her go before the ceremony. Tamika read that one too. We do not need her anymore. The judge looked at Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh looked at the table. The judge ruled in my favor. She found that the original design predated my employment and was therefore my intellectual property. She found that Kavanaugh had hired me specifically to acquire the design and had fired me to prevent me from claiming authorship. She awarded damages, including a share of the firm's profits from the project, and ordered that the award submission be amended to include my name as the principal designer. She also said something from the bench that I carry with me. Mr. Kavanaugh, you built your career on the work of a woman you treated as disposable. The bridge will stand for 100 years. This ruling will make sure her name stands with it. The award committee amended the record. The plaque now reads, Whitfield River Crossing, designed by Amara Johnson, not Kavanaugh Engineering Associates, not Richard Kavanaugh, Amara Johnson. Kavanaugh's firm lost 3 major clients within 6 months. He did not lose his license, but he lost his reputation, which in engineering is the same thing. I need to tell you something about what it felt like to stand on that bridge after it was built and know that my name was not on it, because that is the part of this story that does not show up in the legal filings. I drove to Virginia the weekend after the bridge opened to the public. I did not tell anyone I was coming. I parked on the east side and walked across. People were walking dogs. Kids were running. A woman was taking a selfie with the sunset behind her. The cables caught the light and turned gold, exactly the way I had imagined when I sketched them on that napkin. I stood in the middle and put my hands on the railing and felt the structure beneath me, the slight vibration of footsteps, the gentle sway that tells you the bridge is alive, that it is doing what it was designed to do, absorbing energy, distributing load, holding weight through empty space. And on the plaque at the entrance it said, Whitfield River Crossing, designed by Kavanaugh Engineering Associates, a gift to the community, a gift to the community. He stole my design, fired me, put his name on it, and called it a gift. I stood there for a long time. I did not cry. I was past crying. I was in that cold, clear place where grief becomes determination, where sadness becomes strategy. I took a photograph of the plaque. I took photographs of every cable, every joint, every connection point. I walked the full length 3 times and compared every detail to my original sketches. It was identical, not inspired by, not adapted from. Identical because it was my bridge, my calculations, my vision, built exactly the way I drew it, and credited to a man who could not have designed a footbridge over a puddle. I drove home that night with the photographs on my phone and a fury in my chest that I carried into the lawyer's office the next morning. Tamika looked at the photographs, looked at my sketches, and said, "We are going to get your name on that bridge." She was right. It took 8 months, but she was right. The day the plaque was changed, I drove back to Virginia. I stood at the entrance and read the new text. Whitfield River, crossing designed by Amara Johnson. My name, in bronze, on a bridge that will stand for 100 years. I called my father. He said, "Did you draw that?" I said, "Yes, Daddy, I drew it." He said, "Well, all right then." That is how my father says he is proud. He does not use the word. He just says, "Well, all right then." And you can hear everything he means underneath it. I started my own firm. It is small, just me and 2 other engineers. We work out of a converted garage. We do not have marble floors or leather chairs, but every project we submit has the designer's name on it, every single one. I drive over the Whitfield River crossing sometimes, when I am in Virginia. I park on the east side, walk to the middle of the bridge, and look down at the water. The cables hum in the wind. The deck curves exactly the way I drew it on a napkin in a coffee shop when I was 26 years old. That bridge is mine. It was always mine, and now the world knows it. If you are listening to this and someone has taken credit for your work, your design, your idea, your creation, do not stay quiet. Date your work. Photograph it. Keep the originals. Keep the napkins. Keep everything. Because the day will come when you need to prove that the thing they are standing on was built by your hands, and on that day, the sketches will speak for themselves.